But moving forward now, in Europe, Real Madrid boss Carlo Ancelotti will take charge of Brazil next summer, says the Brazilian Football Confederation president Ednaldo Rodrigues. The five-time World Cup winners are confident the Italian will be in place for the Copa America in June 2024. Rodrigues said Fernando Diniz will oversee the Selecao until then, alongside his role as Fluminense boss. Brazil have been without a prominent head coach since the World Cup, when Tite resigned following their quarter-final defeat by Croatia, with under-20s coach Ramon Menezes taking charge of recent friendly fixtures. Ancelotti, whose contract expires next summer, would be the first foreign manager to coach Brazil since 1965. There has been no official word from Ancelotti or Real Madrid that he will depart the club next year. The 64-year-old began his second spell at the Bernabeu in 2021 after leaving Everton and has won the Champions League, La Liga, Copa del Rey and the Club World Cup, among a string of successes since his return. The Champions League final win against Liverpool in 2022 was Ancelotti's fourth European triumph as a manager and second with Real Madrid, after also winning the competition twice with AC Milan. Ancelotti said he was going to retire with Real Madrid. Real Madrid was going to be his last hurrah. And then whispers and then a loud roar came about him taking over the Brazilian national squad. And subsequently, various Brazilian players have come out to lend their support to the idea of Ancelotti taking over the management reins. And it looked for a time like Brazil were going to go all out. They were going to do the effective campaigning to sway the Italian coach to take over Brazil. That sounds funny to me, an Italian coach taking over the Brazilian national team. But that's the world we live in, and that is the level of reputation Carlo Ancelotti has. But it seems Brazil have now taken heed. They're not going to get their man this summer, but they are willing to wait until 2024, at which point it would probably be just a couple of months before the competition they face. Talk to me about how insignificant this is that the almighty Brazilian national team is willing to wait for Carlo Ancelotti.
So I won't see it that way, like they are willing to wait for Carlo Ancelotti. I would see it that they are willing to, will I say, risk the impending appointment, because at the moment, who will they use to replace Chiche? Anybody who comes to Brazil now has a huge boot to fill in, because Chiche, before leaving, he had a very illustrious career with Brazil. I mean, out of 81 matches, he won 61. So just add the losses into the draws. Add the draws and losses. I think 18 draws and 7 losses. So he was actually very successful national. So you may not see those successes when it comes to titles. They've not won the World Cup in a while. The Copa America is always going to Argentina, right? But anybody who's coming in now also has to have the winning mentality. And if you look at world football now, who has the winning mentality? Who has a very rich trophy-leading cabinet? It's Carlo Ancelotti. So it's just like tit for tat. So Carlo Ancelotti is bringing in the winning mentality from club football into national team. It doesn't matter whether he's Italian or not. What matters is, can he do the job? I think he can. And this is a good decision towards the World Cup in 2026. Brazil are a huge powerhouse when it comes to world football. And it's only fitting that they get a huge coach who is also a powerhouse when it comes to world football.
Well, the three biggest names in European football right now are Carlo Ancelotti, Pep Guardiola, and I think to an extent Zinedine Zidane. But nations as proud as Brazil have a history of delving back into the roster of past players, past managers, to come back and take over and run the helm of the club, of the nation, the national team. And one such name that comes to mind, if they were willing to go back to rely on a legend who has managed the national side before or who has played for the national side before and who has a reputation that is easily recognizable and very respectable, Scolari. But in this instance, Brazil are saying they want to go out of their comfort zone and go for a manager who's not Brazilian, who does not operate the style of football necessarily that Brazil have been historically known for. And for about a decade now, people have talked about the fact that the Brazilian squad as is now isn't the Brazilian squad, or doesn't adhere to the Brazilian identity of football as he used to, with the likes of Cafu, Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, talent all over the pitch that could dribble, carry the ball from defense to attack and score on their own. And flamboyance was the name of the game. This Brazil squad, barring Neymar, there are very few start to finish playful players in the game.
You have a couple of players who rely more on finesse, rely more on branding, rely more on their merits rather than the actual art of the game. I mean, when it comes to football and when you bring in Brazil to the center, it's not just football, it becomes samba, right? It's why most of them dance when they score the goal. It's in depth in them. If you watch the Brazil national team these days, especially like the last time we saw them at the World Cup in 2022, aside from the glimpses from the Charleston, that acrobatic goal, the Vinicius Junior once in a while, probably Alisson in goal, there was no other shining light in the Brazil national team. And you take your mind back to the time of Ronaldinho, the time of Ronaldo de Lima, the time of Cafu. When you talk about defense, they also had defenders who can double track as both defenders and attackers. So for Brazil right now, they need to look inwards. And I think what Carlo Ancelotti will come and do is to bring back their expression. He's a coach who allows players to express themselves. He doesn't bring in that KG football analogy or maybe tiki-taka or probably one kind of football approach. He's a kind of expressive person that allows people to express themselves. So that is what Brazil needs at the moment. And like I said, it's probably fitting.
But surely there will be those who will say that bringing Carlo Ancelotti, an outsider who does not identify as a Brazilian, who does not identify with the samba mentality, that it is driving the Brazilian culture, the football culture and philosophy further away from the way it used to be, that the current squad and future squads will continue to stop being recognizable as a Brazilian squad. Rather, they will be more like a European squad. And recently, Cafu himself came out and said that Brazilian players should stop going to Europe because they no longer look like the Brazilian players of old. They no longer play like the Brazilian players of old. They play with technique still, but the technique they employ now is all about in possession retention, in retaining the ball and passing the ball and looking organized, rather than the individual spur of the moment unpredictability of each player on the pitch who could mesmerize and dazzle and make you feel like this was what football was all about. Sure, Johan Cruyff said, believed in total football, but for a long time, the Brazilian way of doing things, of playing the game, was what everyone truly recognized as football. And bringing Carlo Ancelotti in, isn't that going to implement further a style of European football that takes away from the natural order of the Brazilian samba?
I really don't think so. I mean, if you go back in time into the history of the Brazil national team, these guys have had over 80 coaches since the inception. They've had over 80 coaches. I think Chiche is the 81st. before they now had Ramon Nunes, who is like the 82nd as a caretaker. And not all of them were Brazilian. Not all of them actually had Brazilian descent. So I think we are overhyping the fact that it has to be a Brazilian coach or it is not a Brazilian coach coming in. What matters is, does he identify with the culture? I think yes. What is the Brazilian culture? Expression. And this is a coach who thrives with players who express themselves. I think it's something that can work if we just look outside the nationality.
Well, again, I go back to the Italian manager taking over a Brazilian team. The Italians historically were never
Now,
known.
imagine.
Yes, go on.
Yes, imagine the Italian tactics and defensive mindset in collaboration with expression of the Brazil national team. Imagine how formidable that team will become, provided the players are able to translate the coach's idea on the
I
pitch.
understand everything you're saying, but the average Brazilian, the Brazilian who believes in the Brazilian way of playing the game, to him, football is about throwing caution to the wind and playing all-out attack to the degree whereby the best defense is offense. And if you are so unpredictable as individuals, then there's no way to shackle or predict the group or squad as a whole from match to match. And that is historically what got Brazil on the face of the map. It is what led to the era of Pele being so successful against the West Germans and eventually allowing for Brazil to win 5 World Cups, which nobody else has won. And I'm just saying, in a game where everybody is trying to copy the Europeans, from the Africans to the Asians, even some South American countries are gradually moving closer and closer to the European style of playing football. Is the Brazilian style going to be lost within all of this homogeneous way of European interpretation of the sport?
So let me throw back the question at you. I'm very sure you've seen some La Liga games and you've watched Rodrigo play. Let's remember Rodrigo is Brazilian. And we've seen Rodrigo play for Real Madrid under the same Ancelotti. Last season, Rodrigo finished the season with 9 goals and 8 assists as a winger or sometimes as an attacking midfielder. Also, there is a certain Vinicius Junior. Hello? Both of them are 22 years old. He is also Brazilian. He's for Real Madrid under the same Carlo Ancelotti. Guess what? He scored 10 goals and 9 assists in just completed season. We remember the 2021-2022 season. They won the Champions League. Remember the 2020-2021 season where Vinicius Junior burst into life. What happened? They gave Barcelona a run for the money. So it's well documented that Brazilians have thrived under Carlo Ancelotti. Casemiro, before coming to Manchester United, thrived under the same Carlo Ancelotti in Real Madrid. Casemiro is Brazilian. So we can begin to pick different aspects of the game to see that Carlo Ancelotti, being an Italian, can still show that aspect of expression that will bring out the best in the average Brazilian player.
All right. Carlo Ancelotti is not the problem. He never will be. But you will admit, this Brazilian squad does not resemble the squad of old. It does not resemble any of the era before, where a defender could be the flamboyant spark in the middle of a game that seemed stale. That a Casemiro-esque defensive midfielder could take the ball and do the unthinkable. Not just shooting from outside the box, but going on a Rudiger-like mazy run through the middle of the park and creating chaos, akin to watching a Lionel Messi. Have we lost that Brazil?
Look at the bodies currently in the Brazil national team in that defensive midfielder role you just mentioned. We have Casemiro, who we all know what he can do on the pitch of play. We have Fabinho of Liverpool, who we also know what he can do in the DM role or holding midfielder role. Go to the defense. We have a Thiago Silva that even when Chelsea are struggling, you still see the Rolls Royce in his football game. We have an Ednaldo who plays for Real Madrid, who we know what he can do on a very good day. Again, I didn't even mention Ednaldo earlier. He plays for Real Madrid under the same Carlo Ancelotti, right? So again, there are several examples you can point to the fact that Carlo Ancelotti is actually, well, we don't know yet. We are just projecting. Can be the reason why Brazil are restored to their former glory. I see Brazilian players thrive under Carlo Ancelotti just for the very fact that Brazilian players themselves, in the defensive role, in the midfield role, in the attacking role, have all tried under the same coach in club football that happens weekly. Not to talk of international games that happens 4 times in a year.
All right. I want to talk
You just
about
have to tell him, be here.
I want to talk about manager reputation. Recently, ever since Man City won the Champions League, the treble, a lot of people, and I feel like European media is sometimes, and it's not even just sometimes, it always picks certain people and labels them heroes, and picks certain people and labels them villains. Perhaps it's the nature of loving a good narrative. But Pep Guardiola is everyone's hero in Europe. And for that reason, the debate has been had now. Is Pep Guardiola on a level where he should be considered as perhaps one of the greatest managers of all time, perhaps greater than Alex Ferguson? But now I want to talk about Ancelotti. He has 4 European Champions League titles. No other manager has done that. And he hasn't always won titles, because when he was at Everton, he certainly didn't win any titles. But he did win with AC Milan. He has won with Real Madrid. And he has won almost everywhere else he has been. So when we talk about maybe not in sheer number, maybe not in sheer numbers of games won, maybe Pep Guardiola has a better win ratio than everybody else. But when you think about how long a coach has been managing for, and in this case, that coach being Carlo Ancelotti, how long he has been managing for, the ratio of wins he has had in terms of trophies, the amount of quality squads he has managed, and even when he was managing a squad that didn't win a title, how well they did relative to the expectations such a club, such a squad might have had upon themselves. Is perhaps Carlo Ancelotti understated as a candidate for maybe the greatest manager of all time?
Absolutely. Even at the moment, most will regard him as the greatest. Imagine he goes on to win the World Cup with Brazil 2026. No argument anymore. Just like Messi did in terms of players. So, I mean, this is the guy who, like you said, he's won the La Liga in 2 different things, right? This guy has won 5 and 4 Champions League titles. I think he's only manager to have won the National League titles in 5 different leagues, right? He has won it everywhere. So, yeah, arguably. And of course, if you're talking about top 3 managers of all time, I would definitely put himself, Pep Guardiola, and probably Jose Mourinho as my top 3. Ferguson, I'm sorry, it doesn't make my top 3. Because look at Pep Guardiola, for example. People don't say this much. Alex Ferguson did the treble once in 1999. Yeah. Pep Guardiola has done it twice. He did it with Barcelona and he did it with Manchester City. This same Pep Guardiola has won 11 league titles in 3 different leagues. 3 with Barcelona, 3 with Bayern Munich, and now 5 with Manchester City. What else does he want to do? So I think these coaches, talking about Ancelotti, Pep Guardiola, Mourinho, they've done enough to actually be in that conversation.
Well, I definitely agree with you that Jose Mourinho should be within the conversation. And Ancelotti is undoubtedly someone you cannot question his credentials, which is probably why the Brazilian national team is so hung up on getting him.